Hey guys, I wanted to take a minute to drop in around the question, why restorative? Especially because time is our most valuable commodity. Why should you spend 30 hours of your time or even 200 hours of your time to learn the art of lying around on bolsters and pillows and learning super complicated blanket folds? Especially because that's a question that I remember having too. I remember when I was in my 200-hour training, we could miss so many sessions of the in-person practices and still graduate on time. And all the ones that I skipped were very carefully selected to be all of the slower modalities, the slower practices, the body scans, the longer meditations, the longer shavasanas, because I just didn't see the value in it as much as I did the more active side of the practice, which is kind of hilarious in hindsight, to think about. And it reminds me of a story in my family, actually, about my older brother. He was probably about 10 when we first went to see the Nutcracker together at Christmas as a family. And we came home from it, and I remember my grandparents asking him, hey, buddy, like, how was it? What did you think? And he just kind of like frowned a little bit and he was like, yeah, it was all right. I just think there was way too much dancing. Um, which is kind of a hilarious thing to say. And I always think of that story too whenever I'm reading feedback forms, because I always do those for like the weekend trainings that I hold in restorative, or if I'm facilitating a restorative section within a 200-hour for another studio. And in all of them, I feel like there's usually at least one person that says something along the lines of, the training was really great. I think the shavasanas were just a little too long. Or, it was so awesome, loved it all. If I had any feedback, I think it just might be that there was a little too much rest, which is kind of like saying there's too much dancing inside a famous ballet, because that's kind of the whole point. But I feel like it's a common misconception, especially in our society, where I feel like it just goes without saying that it's like the more activity or the more that we do or the more that we take on or the more that we accomplish or the more that we have, the more value there is. And so I think it makes sense that we wouldn't all the way see the value in slowing down or in being still inside a shape like Shavasana for an extended period of time, um, without doing a deeper look at the why. But I think I also just want to validate that it is a more advanced almost part of the yoga practice. It's simple in one sense, because you are, put in a very comfortable, cushy, propped position. It's not like you have to hold a handstand for 2 minutes, but it's definitely not easy. And in one sense, it's like one of the most courageous things that we can do is take a shavasana pose where we have to lean into being with ourselves without any sort of distractions. Um, so yeah, I thought I would just outline 3 of the reasons, that I feel like changed my mind and kind of won me over to the value proposition of weaving this practice into the daily fabric of my life. So I'll just lay them out there and you can let me know what you think. First of all, I guess definition of restorative comes from Judith Lassiter, who's kind of the mother and founder of the practice. And she kind of refined and brought it from her teacher, BKS Iyengar. But she says that restorative yoga is the use of props to support the body in positions of comfort and ease to facilitate relaxation and health. And so I feel like the focus is relaxation. And in 5 element theory, which is a branch of Chinese medicine, kind of an uh, ancient healing modality that looks at everything holistically and kind of says, like, for any object, we have a physical level, an emotional level, and a spiritual level. And I feel like that lines up exactly with how we can look at relaxation for ourselves and the benefits that come along with that in each of those dimensions. So on that first plane, I feel like purely on just a physical level, the benefits from this practice come from the conscious relaxation. And as we consciously relax, which is different from sleeping, you might think, I'm Ray, I'm well rested. I get 8 hours of sleep every night. I have plenty of energy. I am good to go. Give me all the power of vinyasa, 2-minute shavasana max, and I am good to go. But conscious relaxation is different than sleeping. They both hold a lot of benefits. But even in sleep, we can still be holding on to muscular tension. And also our minds can still be circling, whirling, processing the day, the week, whatever. So that's why we can sleep for 8 hours, but still wake up not all the way feeling rested. And that might be on a conscious level or on a more subtle unconscious level. So it's a way for us to basically, with conscious relaxation, to begin to release tension inside the body and also to process stress. So it's a way to regulate our nervous system so that it can rebound quickly from stressful events instead of carrying around the stress until it becomes chronic, and then that manifests in chronic pain. So we all have stress, and a lot of times it's called a stress cycle. And a lot of us have incomplete stress cycles that are just kind of still spinning inside our bodies because our bodies hold and carry that stress. So you might be walking around thinking that you're totally fine, but probably on some level you have undigested or undealt with stress that's being held within your physical body. And we don't necessarily see that until it manifests as a disease. And a lot of recent medical research is showing that 90% of illness and disease are stress related, which is kind of crazy to think about. So things like depression and anxiety, insomnia, not being able to sleep, and even like get to the place where you can get some of those healing benefits of sleep, cardiovascular disease, a weakened immune system, a lot of digestive issues, chronic pain, like I mentioned before, most all of the autoimmune diseases, long COVID symptoms, and also cancer, which is kind of a big one for me. And it's like the inflammation in the body that comes from stress that kind of opens you up for things like cancer. And it's also related to like your genetic history and like the environment that you were raised in. But in my case, I feel like it's really interesting because I was diagnosed with stage 3 melanoma when I was in college. And the doctors were totally scratching their heads because they were like, it doesn't run in your family. And it also, like, you didn't ever have a blistering burn or sunburn, which is also where the cell can sometimes be born. So you're kind of a little bit of an anomaly. But as I look back on that time, I feel like it kind of makes sense because I was totally running myself in all the directions with all the different jobs that I was working. I was also in school. I was applying for the piano performance program at Juilliard School of Music. I was pushing myself in all the directions and all the ways, body, mind, and spirit. And I think since I wasn't making the time to rest and recalibrate than my body kind of forced me to. Um, and then the only other time that it's resurfaced, because I still go in every 6 months to a year to get checked. And the only time in the last 10 years that it's resurfaced was when I was graduating from college and was in a similar place. Like I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't eating whole foods, I wasn't exercising, I wasn't doing yoga. I was overworked and underrested and kind of had left a lot of the practices that I had put into place for self-regulation. So I feel like in hindsight, it totally makes sense to me. And I'm also grateful for that resurfacing and that time when I left my practice, because I feel like it's the times that we leave our practice that then kind of underline the value of making time for those practices within our lives. So restorative and yin have kind of become my way of regulating the inflammation and the tendencies that my body has towards producing that type of cell to stay healthy instead. Also on the physical level, muscle tension, which I started to speak about. So as we completely support the body with props, like that's kind of the importance of all the props that we use, because it's built around this premise that complete support equals complete release. And I think that there are two types of muscle tension. There's physical as well as emotional. Physical can be, the tension that we're maybe not even aware of as we're like driving in traffic and we're like kind of totally like bracing and tensing and shoulders are coming up, or could be hunching over a computer, or can come from a lot of places in our daily life, or if you're a big time runner or cyclist, like there's also a lot of tension that kind of can follow along with those activities. So this is a way to kind of release that physical tension instead of letting our body hold it, because when we hold onto that tension or don't find a place to lengthen and to release it, basically, that's what can start to turn into chronic stress and chronic pain, as the body just doesn't even know how to let go of it because it's held it for so long. And then on the emotional level, I feel like that kind of leads us into the second tier of benefits for relaxation and in the stress of being a human in our lives. Emotion is something that we also can store within our bodies. And it's like when our body is responding to feeling provoked or overwhelmed or abandoned or unloved, then tension kind of becomes emotional tension becomes the way that we store what we don't want to feel. And it's also it's like a protection mechanism to shield us from what we don't want to take in or aren't able to take in. And if we ever feel threatened or afraid, then we kind of, brace and harden. And one of my teachers, Jillian Pransky, says, we all harden ourselves every single day. We may not know it as it's happening, but we will undoubtedly experience its effects. Tension is the stress response finding a home in our body. Tension is a stress response finding a home inside our body. So I love that description, because we kind of have like daily stressors, things that take us off guard, like all the time and all day. And instead of letting those find a home in our body, it's these slower practices with intentional relaxation techniques and mindfulness and awareness that we're able to release these stress responses that we might be unconsciously carrying inside our body that could then manifest as a disease. There's actually a book written on that called The Emotion Code. And it's written by a healer that has done like years and years of research and worked and healed so many clients, so many crazy, amazing stories. But the whole premise is built on the fact that disease comes from trapped or unprocessed emotions within your body. And as you deal with or release those emotions, then you find your way to full health and full freedom and expression of who you are and who you were meant to be. Um, and you can do that by like working with someone in that methodology. There's a lot of practitioners, but I feel like also a really potent way to start exploring that is just within your own practice and within these restorative modalities, because they're all about healing the internal landscape of ourselves and being aware of what is there and making what's unconscious conscious so that we can heal and integrate and come back together even stronger than we were before. And then the last element is the spiritual plane. My teacher Amba at Nasara Yoga Institute used to start out every training and say, you know, why are we here? What are we doing? What is this yoga? And she would always say, I'm here and I'm here teaching this yoga for world peace. Because the more that we drop into our hearts and live from that space, the more other people will begin to do the same. And then from there, we'll begin to together actually create and build the kind of world that we want to live in, one that's driven by unconditional love instead of ego. And I think that's kind of a golden thread that runs through a lot of these slower practices, not just restorative, but also yin and qigong and mindfulness meditation, yoga nidra, is being able to drop into and uncover or remember the eternal aspect of ourselves and who we are. And I feel like that can dramatically change our lives and also the lives of people around us. My dad always says, he was like, isn't it funny how when you're running late, everyone on the road is an idiot? And I feel like kind of the same is true. Like when we're running a little bit on empty or are like pulling ourselves in all the different directions, we don't have a lot of capacity to be our best self or to hold space for other people or to see the best in a situation or give other people the benefit of the doubt or tune into the unspoken signals that are happening in any given situation. So I think it's as we rest and as we maybe take these shavasanas that are a little bit longer than 2 minutes, that we start to feel into and to find that aspect of ourselves. And that's the thing that always keeps me coming back for more. So excited to dive into each of those aspects a little bit more. And yeah, that's it for now.